I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting of September 18th. You have before you the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Comments from the public? Seeing none. Presentations and discussions of issues of interest to the committee, the NPS school resource officers.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, at your request, we wanted to annually have the school resource officers come, and I asked them to just sort of give us a life in the day of a school resource officer. We're very fortunate to have 2 school resource officers, and I want to publicly thank Chief Pittman and the town for ensuring that we have been able to keep that level of support for our students and staff. So we have with us tonight Cassie Thompson, Officer Thompson, excuse me, and Officer Mansfield, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. So we'll be short and quick, unless you don't want us to be. This will let me go. Done. So the only thing typical about our day is that we arrive between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, and we end with, well, that's not even typical. So we arrive between 7 and 7:30 in the morning. Generally, we assist with morning drop-off and parking, which is a very hot commodity. And then our day is filled pretty much with consulting with other school staff, such as the high school student support team and the middle school student support team. We meet with the school social workers on a daily basis. We meet with school admin, I would say, almost on a daily basis. I teach an introduction to criminal justice class in the high school. We have lunch with kids. That's probably the most fun, lunch. School walkthroughs, and we assist with pickup and clearing kids from the school. In addition to a typical day, we utilize K-9 Mobi, Officer Mansfield does, at the high school and middle school levels. We train teachers and staff on lockdown procedures. We work with IDSC classrooms, our teachers and their students, and getting them comfortable with the police department and officers, so if they ever need help, whether it's in or outside of school, they can see a friendly face. We meet with parents. Sometimes we deal with truancy or house visits if needed. We assist with school with any DCF reporting, Department of Children and Families. All juvenile criminal cases we have a hand in, and then things like bike and Halloween safety. And as it says at the bottom, every day is different and usually never typical. Some days we're here till 5 because of something pops up. Other days we are lucky enough to leave on time. We have one program that we run in collaboration with the police department, community school, and middle school. It is all middle school students. It's called Leadership Explorers. We explore different avenues that students can be leaders in. This past year was the brand new revamped version of it. It used to be called YELL, which was Youth Empowering Lasting Leadership. We renamed it, rebranded it kind of, and we did like a canned food drive. We went to the Salt Marsh Center several times and did technology, which they were very grateful for. We had some Salt Marsh clients, I guess you'd call them, come with lists. And then they brought their computers or their iPads and said, please help. Their phones, yeah.
Phones were a
Hot topic. The end of the year, we did a huge island cleanup. We went to the skate park, the state forest, and Nobody Beach and collected probably around 9 to 10 large contractor bags of trash, which the kids really, really liked, actually. And then it's completely student-driven. So students brainstorm and agree on the areas they'd like to explore at the beginning of the school year. So it's pretty much all, they get to pick a topic. And again, we did short and sweet.
Yeah, I'll just add quick. Like she said, we get there in the morning, and from the get-go, we're there at 7 o'clock, and it's parking, driving through. But I'll tell you what, having dropped my own children off and being there, because there are 2 of us now, I think the drop-offs, the pickups have drastically gotten a lot better. I think a lot of it's us standing there because they see us and they're like, "That's it. All right, we're not going to do this anymore." And we're out there every day we can be out there. If you drive by, you notice, you see us. We're out front of both schools every day, rain, shine, you name it, unless obviously we have other stuff going. And then during the day, we're in the school, we're walking. I mean, I average 5 miles a day walking through the school. I'm in every school. We don't each have a school that we're assigned to. We go to every school. If one of us happens to be out for any reason, then one of us covers all 4 schools. We're all versed in all the kids everywhere. We know all of the admin staff as well. They can call us, text us, do anything they want with us on a really simple, easy basis. So I think we have a really great relationship. I think things have been going great. This is my 2nd year now, and I think it's working well, and I think we have a good relationship with everybody here.
Questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
This is your time.
Zona?
What's your, you said sometimes we leave time, is that the end of the day?
Like, he leaves by 3, and I'm generally 3:30.
We stagger our times, so I do 7 to 3, she's 7:30 to 3:30, just in case something happens before school, and then she stays a little bit in case something happens, but sometimes we get calls and we're still following up for a while.
We appreciate you being there.
Yeah.
Pauline?
Yeah, just to talk about the Leadership Explorers, is that open to all of the, is it all middle school? Or is it
6th,
just
7th, and 8th, yep.
6th, 7th, and 8th,
Mhm.
okay. And what are your numbers like?
We about 15 last year.
Every meeting.
Yeah, we meet every other Wednesday, and like I said, we change it up. I've already had kids asking about it this year. We're gonna start it, we're gonna have a meeting next week just to get a group interest, see how many are interested in doing it. They each had their t-shirts, and it was really good because we'd see those like 10, 15 kids wear the t-shirts that they designed, they made up on Wednesdays. Like Wednesdays, they show up to school with their t-shirts on, Leadership Explorers. They were really into it. It was a diverse group too. You had some sports kids, you had some music kids, but they had a good time. It didn't hurt. We definitely offered the food. That got some of them there in the beginning, but it was a good group. The kids were good. They really took to it really well. Our last end of the year meeting, we actually went out to the school. We actually had the chef from the high school. We got him all the supplies, and his kids made a lot of the food for our end of the year cookout that we had. Some teachers, we had all their friends and family come. So it's good. We're just looking at improving whatever way we can this year with it. Just adding on a little bit.
And do you anticipate having the same kids come back and then bringing new kids in
Some of
as well?
them, yes. I've already talked to the 5th graders last year that are 6th graders this year that I knew, and I've already got 4 or 5 of them at least that are interested in coming and doing it this year. So I think we'll have better numbers this year.
And it's just the 2 of you doing it for some
And
reason?
Blair.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Blair from
Yeah.
the community school.
It's nice for them to have the opportunity to be with you.
It is, yeah, it's great.
Outside of school, so it's great.
Really good.
Thank you.
Good.
Jen?
I just want to thank you both because I see you every day and you guys are so involved, hands-on with all of the students. And I think our entire board appreciates. I don't even think this sums up really what you do in a
So
day.
short, sweet.
Yeah, I know. But you deserve a lot more credit than what is described here on the paper because I know how hard you guys worked and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about the introduction to criminal justice.
Absolutely.
What's in the curriculum?
So we follow the Voc Tech curriculum, and it goes everywhere from talking about the Massachusetts State Constitution in relation to the U.S. Constitution, crime scene and forensics, which I try not to get too into because we have a few classes that are offered in the science department through that, to how the court system works, how the correctional system works. So we try to follow that and just try to throw in more of some local stuff too, because the kids really like all the hands-on. They like throwing the drunk goggles on. They like taking a tour of the police department. We go to the Barnstable County Correctional Facility. They take a tour there. Some of them.
I taught Monday. I brought the
Oh, yeah,
dog
you
in
brought
and
the
did a
dog in on
demonstration on the dog, what he uses, how he can work, everything, we just,
Try to give them a range so they can see what else is out there.
Have you seen kids express an interest in it as a career?
So we've had several students that have gone through it. Farrell Dews, Dakota Dragon. I had one student, Blake Lazarus, who changed her major in college from international studies to social work because she saw a bunch of stuff in that and said she realized what she wanted to do. But Dakota and Farrell right now worked for us for summer specials. And Farrell's going to the Reserve Academy to be a reserve police officer and come back and work for us here. So it's nice to see some students like really translate that into. And I do, depending on the student, depending on the year, allow students to do school degree with the police department. So they'll take that class if they want, if they fit into their schedule, and then they'll try to do school to career with me or the police department, and it kind of flows very nicely into that after graduation.
Great. Thank you very, very much. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Lucky to have
Thank you
both.
for all you do.
We're very, very fortunate.
Next thing is sign myself out. I'll leave that open.
Other side, there we go.
Yes, miss.
Challenged.
Next, moving on to student conduct. Mikey, we're going to,
I'm going to just sort of give a preamble. This is something that we had talked about in the retreat that we had earlier this year, and it had been asked to put this on the agenda. I guess I would start by saying that we work very hard to ensure fair and consistent responses to student discipline in all of our schools. I'm getting a cold, excuse me. Having said that, I would have to acknowledge that we are, along with our increasing enrollment, of course, seeing an increase in students with a variety of needs. And those needs are sometimes academic and intellectual, but they're often physical, social, and emotional challenges. And I think it's clearly increasing, and that is a reflection of society. I think schools, public schools, are always a reflection of society. And with those increases, our capacity is being tested by all of those challenges. And by that, I mean our special education department, our counselors, our teachers, our administration. That there are a lot of children with needs who need some very special attention. Nantucket is not alone in facing these challenges and in determining appropriate responses to them. I think if you read about any community newspaper, you're going to see that there are far greater challenges today than there were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. If you're on a listserv that serves teachers or counselors or principals or even the superintendent's listserv, you will see a constant stream of notices about social emotional learning. That is the big term that is used recently. But as with many things in education, this is really not something new. We've been responding and intervening on behalf of students, I would wager, since public education began. And one such program, example in our district, is a Responsive Classroom. I think the school committee is well aware of that program at the elementary school level. But, in response to some of the needs, we're expanding some of those programs. Decades of research, I think, confirm that students with social, emotional, cognitive, and academic development, they're deeply intertwined and vital for learning, all of those spheres. And we've talked about it at this school committee many times about the whole child. I think former Secretary of Education Arne Duncan said in an address, and I've written the quote, you can't have academic success, high graduation rates, college attendance, and college success without addressing the needs of the whole child. It's the foundation. This is more important than having great physics, biology, and chemistry teachers. Sorry, high school science department. It's not this versus that, as in academic versus social and emotional learning, but both. They come hand in hand, and children are not going to be prepared to learn unless we meet their basic needs, these foundational needs first. What does that mean? It means that we have to intentionally design positive learning environments that are developmentally healthy and have long-term relationships with children. It's all about relationships. And I think any of the principals would say that to you for all children, but especially those that are hard to reach. You have to have a relationship with them in order to help them. And it also includes directly, explicitly teaching social and emotional learning strategies that are attuned to meet the diverse needs of students in diverse socioeconomic, ethnic, and racial contexts. And we're doing that, and you'll hear a lot of talk among certainly the NES and NIS faculty about social emotional learning. We're trying to have our guidance counselors provide that instruction, that explicit instruction in classrooms. And, we're also trying to provide the counseling and mental health supports that are necessary for our kids. And we've talked about that time and again here. But I do think we need to recognize that the needs of our children are challenging the administration, they're challenging teachers in the classroom to try to meet those needs while helping children with their intellectual and cognitive development as well. So that's sort of a preamble. I'm not sure that you necessarily want every principal to speak, but I think that they would be prepared to speak about student, and I think student behaviors is probably a better word than student conduct, because conduct sometimes implies a willful behavior, and sometimes this is, and sometimes it isn't on the part of our children. So my hat's off to educators because it is getting increasingly more difficult. We're trying as a district to give our administrators and teachers the supports necessary, but it's a challenge.
I think I'd like to hear from each of the principals, and I kind of disagree, Mike. The word should be conduct, because it's not just behavior. To me, it's how they conduct themselves, depending on the situation they're in. So, it could be a very positive situation. So I think we'd like to hear about the positive conduct as well as the not so positive, the challenging conduct, because that's what makes the whole child.
Do you want to have the principals come up one by one, or what do
Yeah,
you?
why not?
Okay. John, you want to start?
I'm just swimming back from the stage.
Did you fly?
No.
No.
Took a boat. Looks like I swam behind the boat. At the high school, since Assistant Principal Sarah Della started, she's been employing what is termed restorative justice. Rather than just a consequence for a misgiving, she uses it as a teachable moment. That what are the takeaways that they can glean from that, while at the same time imposing the consequence, but not just, okay, that's a lunch detention or that's an after-school detention, and working with staff on working with students and bringing families into this, because it shouldn't just be the school. We need families in this. So if you have specific questions about discipline issues at the high school, I'm happy to answer.
Have you had in many situations since school started? How about that?
We have not. It has been an amazing start to the year. If you remember last year, thank you. Vaping just took us right from day one of the school year. And the year before, we had an incident where students were using inappropriate substances on day one. And so this year, we're 9 days in, 10 days in, really enjoyed a successful start without any major disciplinary infractions.
Awesome.
Yeah, only question, and I think you addressed this when we were talking about detentions and in-school suspensions. I think you're trying more to keep more students in school suspension rather than out-of-school suspensions, correct?
That is
And
correct.
working with the faculty and making sure that they have access to their classroom and their materials and everything, which I commend you, because I think it's harder for the kids who tend to get out-of-school suspensions are the kids that need to be in school the most.
Correct.
And often having a out-of-school suspension can actually seem like it's a reward.
And that's where the family piece is important, because if they are just, you're going to stay home and play video games for the day, that's not much of a lesson. And so I commend Jen Sardellis on the work that she's done with families and getting them part of the conversation and keeping students in school.
There's a lot of, and I hate to say that, just go by Facebook, but there's been a lot of things recently on Facebook around schools who are employing meditation for students who have been pulled out of detention and actually using some mindfulness techniques with this population of students, so that they could actually not only take a moment to breathe, but also reflect. And it sounds like that's something that you're already working kind of towards. So
Some stuff, yeah.
yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Jen?
Steve?
Fine. Thank you, John.
So, middle school are tricky years for kids, for sure. So, this year I think we are set up more than ever to be able to support students. The addition of a couple of staff members have helped. So, one, we've added a dean of students. Fernando Jones is here. So I'll introduce Fernando. Fernando joins us as the dean of students. He's got a strong background, both from his education at Hobart, but also in the National Guard and the leadership that he has, positions he has in the National Guard. But he comes to us and he knows a lot of the kids already, and his approach is really about building relationships with kids first, to be able to then, in a similar way that John described, Jen Sardellis working with kids, to use incidents as a teachable moment. So the addition of a dean of students, the addition of a student success program, it's kind of like Andrew Baselli's program on a middle school level, so it's not exactly the same. That's taught by Mark Unella. Those two things have already made a difference at our school. We also have just stepped up our efforts in the classrooms to make sure teachers are present in the hallways during passing time, and just put more emphasis than ever before. We've always done this at the middle school, but just this year about the importance of relationships over the first couple weeks of school. And I would echo what Dr. Bucky talked about with, we can't do it alone. We need the help of parents, because we've found that with the few incidents that we've had so far this year, in some cases it's because kids are up all night, in their bedrooms watching TV or not getting any sleep, and that just can't happen. Parents need to step up and help us by sending their kids prepared for school, meaning that they've had a good night's sleep and breakfast and those kinds of things. But the incidents that we see are the level of disrespect we haven't been satisfied with in the past, and so we're really working with kids through our advisory program to be able to talk about expectations for behavior and about respecting each other, respecting the school, and respecting adults and educators. So far the start of the year, no significant issues, minor middle school kind of things, and so we're using it as a teachable moment. The positive, to speak to Zona's point, is that really the vast majority of our kids are wonderful. It's really a small portion of our kids that struggle to live up to our motto of doing the right thing every day. So it's been a good start.
Thank you. I'm happy with
Just to touch in again with Dr. Bucky's piece, is there work also reinforcing support for your staff, custodians, lunch assistants, so that the message is consistent? Because I know often the classroom teacher might be able to, or you as an administrator might be confident to stop a behavior in the hallway. But I also know that very often it's easier to turn the other way. So is there some sort of support or training for your building staff?
I'm not sure how much training in terms of like the custodial staff with this, but we have talked to the kids about making sure that it doesn't matter what adult is asking you to take off your hat, for example, a simple rule to follow, that they need to be respectful of any adult in the school. So we could probably sit down with the custodians to maybe provide some training, just so they're using similar language that we are, but their interactions with kids are pretty limited.
Okay, thanks.
Jen?
No, thank you very much.
Steve?
Yeah, following up on that last point first, I would hope the custodians at least would have been advised that anytime they're disrespected, they need to report it.
Yeah.
And not just let it ride, because I think they take too much of it sort of in stride and don't know that their input would be welcome and needed with respect to certain kids. I don't know if they're going to know their names. My overall question is about the roles now with a new dean of students, which I think is a good idea. How are your roles defined? Are you and your assistant principal still involved in discipline? Is he the front line? How does it operate?
He is the front line. We are still involved in middle school. Similar to the school resource officer's presentation, there is no typical day. And it's kind of rare that we only have like one case at a time. So we're all available to be able to interact with kids, and certain kids have certain special needs or unique needs or have a different relationship with one of us. So we may play as the point person for certain kids. For the most part, our dean of students will be the point person, the first person, but we consult on a regular basis.
And do you still have set up a computer program? I recall a computer program where we reported behaviors and got feedback and things were kept track of.
We're still recording all of that, and there's a referral protocol. Believe it or not, it's a piece of paper.
Oh, no, we're going back to paper.
Yeah.
It's a hall pass.
That's a quick question.
Go on, Steve.
Yeah.
How have the students and the parents taken to the new role dean of students? Have you gotten feedback?
Haven't gotten much feedback. Part of the protocol is not only speaking with students when they stray from doing what's expected, but also then making sure we're communicating with parents. Those phone calls have been well received. Our assistant principal, Jamie Bailey, for the most part, does the communicating with parents just to build that relationship as well. So, but we haven't specifically gotten feedback about the position.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Oy.
Hi,
Aye.
how are you? So social emotional learning is something that I'm particularly passionate about, including in everything we do as we think about educating the whole child. And so at Nantucket Intermediate School, this year we have a strong focus on our Tier 1 instruction for social emotional learning for all students. We did last year as well, but now we're thinking about how to grow that in even stronger way in everything that we do. So we do subscribe to responsive classroom language and methodologies and philosophies, and we talk about those all the time. We have a weekly memo that goes out to staff, and there's a great book called The First 6 Weeks, which really talks about building community within your classroom and across the school, building relationships with students and the importance of that. And it talks about things like what to do when a student is showing and demonstrating lagging skills. How do we support them in that area? Because we know that that's what it is. We believe that like math or reading, with regard to lagging skills in this arena that we have to teach and reteach, and we have to practice. They're young enough where we feel we can make a big difference in their growth and development. So to that end, that's what we do. Our guidance counselors do teach our students very explicitly. They also communicate with our staff and with our parents, our families, about what they're teaching, what the students are learning through their newsletters and through conversations with staff. So that's happening. What else are we doing? We're actively identifying students who have demonstrating those lagging skills and thinking about in terms like you would with reading or math, tier 2 instruction, tier 3 instruction. What are we doing? What interventions are we providing? How are we supporting their growth and development in these areas? Because if they're not ready to learn, they're not going to learn reading or math or writing. What else? Let's see. We also are engaged this year. We're excited about our work with an outside consultant, Alex Hirschberg, because we recognized last year that we wanted more support with all of this and how to better work with our students and our whole school with making this a school-wide effort with regard to beliefs and how do we implement in a way that it truly is school-wide and it's done in a very robust way. So we're excited about that work as well.
Wayne?
Good, thank you.
Jane?
Thank you.
Steve?
No?
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, you got off
That was
easy.
I think.
It's better to go third.
Hello.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kim.
So it's nice, I'm usually first. So it's nice to follow up because a lot of what Eve Marie shared are certainly things that begin in our school. So we follow Responsive Classroom, and the first 6 weeks that Eve Marie referred to for our kids, often it's the first introduction to all of the tenets of Responsive Classroom. What I love about Responsive Classroom, and I certainly don't have the knowledge that others here have, just experiential knowledge in the last 7 years, it's really about responsibility for your actions. And so when kids are working through things and have a problem, there are venues where in order to solve that problem, you've talked through it and you've come up with other ways to solve it and strategies to use should this occur again. We do follow the first 6 weeks. Our kindergarten teachers are nervous right now because they really want 2 solid weeks of how do we use materials in the classroom? How do we walk down the hallway? How do we go to the bathroom? How do we cut and throw out paper? So they're working on all of those foundational skills and then trying to embed some academics into that as well. We also have social emotional learning occurring in every child's classroom once a week. And then what we do is take a look at people who could be referred to the Student Support Center for behaviors, and we also have paper. Nice thing about the paper is we can use that to input into Aspen later, but kids who become repeaters become kids who go into targeted skill groups with our guidance counselors to work more deeply on that. Nina and I are both involved in discipline, and we do progressive discipline. Our kids are ages 3 to 8, sometimes 9. And so we operate in a progressive way. We do the problem solving, we do all the things that come with Responsive Classroom, but we have had, certainly our numbers are the lowest, we have had kids who have struggled, and we do things like missing part of your recess. We feel like recess is really important, so we never want to take all of it away. We also put, we use our OT room, which has become a pretty fantastic room over now that we have space. And we use it because lots of times some behaviors can be related to kids' ability to attend and some of their sensory needs. So that's a great place to get some movement, and then that helps you refocus to go back into the classroom. We use child study to refer children who have social emotional needs or any kind of conduct issues. And then we have kids who enroll that it's part of their IEP. And so we just have the supports in place there. We've had just one ongoing issue since school started. And it's troubling for all of us because this is not something we've seen before in this child particularly, but also in the school. And we used to have an options program, which comes under the special needs department. And as we were splitting the school, the kids who had participated in options weren't in the elementary school. So the option staff went to the intermediate school. So we still have the structure in place. We don't have a special ed teacher to lead that, but we are using our social worker, and we are using the teaching assistant who runs the student support center for us. And anytime someone goes there, guidance is your first point of contact, and then administration, and we follow a whole behavior flow chart that all staff are aware of.
That was a big sigh. I was
Well, I have
waiting for something
at
really
the end of it all.
powerful. I guess I've always been someone that cringes when I think of a student losing recess because of behavior. And I admit I'm not in a classroom, but I just, for me, feel that the message that we're sending is, and again, it depends on the student, it depends on the behavior, but I just feel like it's a punishment, or a time of recess is a time that they can get out some of their physical needs that young children have. So I would like to ask, what are some of the things that the students are doing? And I heard you that they're missing part of recess, not all of it.
Yeah.
But what are some of the activities or conversations or pieces that they would be doing during that time? And how is it that they are aware that they're missing recess? Is it something that is sort of announced in front of everybody, or is that something that, that's talk me through that a little bit, if you
So
would.
sometimes the behavior issues that happen in our building happen on the playground. And so, we don't really have this year. Has it happened in the past? Yes. And so if you are, if you punch someone on the playground, that's not okay. It's not safe. And so then we have the conversation, we work through it, we do apology actions. And then if it happens again the next day, then we are following up with parents, that tends to happen if someone gets hurt. Anyway, but then we would go through a couple of times of trying to talk through this problem, set up the supports outside, and then we say, you know what, you're not doing recess properly. This isn't safe. In our first 6 weeks, we talk about how to do recess through a responsive classroom, how to use the structures, how to play games. And so then we'll say, it's a part of recess. And then what are they doing in there? Problem-solving conversations. We have mini labyrinths to just sort of help them slow down, to be thoughtful. That's moving your finger around the little labyrinth. We have brain gym that we've had kids do before, which has to do with using movement to exercise your body to better enable you to focus. We use the OT space. We've used the fabulous courtyard playground we have, which is not wide open like the field, but instead contained. So we find ways, because we also know how important that movement is, but we also want to make sure that the consequences are related to the behavior itself. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
No, my question was about the recess as well, because I know that's something that we have talked about, using recess as a punishment or for homework or work missed. So you
Yeah.
answered those questions.
we don't.
So
It's
thank
really
you.
about how recess was used, and often those behaviors are at recess.
Yes, thank you.
Can I just, sorry, I know you're already asking. Do you have classrooms that are doing the mindfulness at the elementary school?
So we did before, when we were pre-K 5, and we had some of the older grades, 5th grade was trained in it, 2 classes in particular. We have teachers who have participated in some of that training, and then we have teachers who have sought this out on their own, and then they employ some of that. We have, or have had a parent who is a yoga instructor, and she's come in to do that as part of morning meeting. So we're trying to share strategies and teach things with kids so that they can use what will work for them.
Thank you.
Steve?
What is the Student Support Center? How does it operate?
Yeah, so when we follow, our plan is when we follow a responsive classroom, a student would take a break, and that's often just like,
So that there's always a person in the center, and you can have a kid go there.
yes, but you don't go there till you're at the much further end
Yeah.
of conduct issues. So take a break is you're distracted at your table, you're disrupting others, and the teacher might just walk by and say, take a break. And so you walk over, and there's a spot where you can also do
In
that
the class.
in the classroom. And then you do that a couple of times, and this is same child, obviously. And then if it continues to be disruptive and take a break isn't helping that child to focus, you might do a buddy teacher timeout, which is you have a paired teacher, and the child just leaves the setting to go next door and take a break next door and see if by moving and changing, that changes the behavior, and then you come back in. And then if it's continues, that may be when the form is filled out, disrupting the class, or whatever the behavior is multiple times, the actions the teacher took, and then they go to the Student Support Center. And that's where we begin the problem-solving conferences and allow for the teacher to come and engage in a conversation with the child away from everything else.
Is that the first time that parents are notified that there are issues?
I would say no. Teachers are on top of that in the classroom for sure.
Mhm.
And we don't like that to be our first call, like so-and-so had a hard time today. So teachers are establishing those relationships with
Right.
families first and then share that.
No, I
as needed.
understand it needs to
Yep.
start in the classroom.
Yep.
I just, support center seems like it would be something that was pretty heavily utilized, but it doesn't sound like it is.
No, it's really meant for those behaviors that need guidance to take a peek at or admin to take a peek
Mhm.
at. And as it goes with progressive discipline, it's further down the.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you.
So I'd like to ask a question of all the administrators. And it may come off a little weird and strange, but that's just the kind of day I'm having. If, in a perfect world, in your effort to meet the need of the whole student, is there a program, a person, a staff person, if you could have one wish to meet that goal, what would it be? I'd like for you to think about that question, and I'd like to ask, I'd like to ask that of the Dean of Students as well. And you can consult with your staff. I'm curious to know if there's something out there that somebody is aware of that we don't have implemented now that you think would benefit your school. If you could send that one wish request to Mike to share with us. Do you think you guys could do that? Is that something that you can think about and just say, if in a perfect world, I think my school could benefit from having this particular program or this staff person on board to help in our efforts to meet the whole student. Michelle?
I was going to suggest a BCBA for the district, a behavioral consultant that could consult to, the teams
And I've heard of that.
assist with behavioral management strategies, do functional behavioral assessments, and kind of oversee. We have our consultant, but they're only here one day a week. So
So that's your wish that you should send to
my
Mike.
wish list.
Okay? So think about that.
Okay. Moving on. Technology
And we're
use.
not witches or warlocks and genies or anything like that, but I just want to know.
We'll move on to technology use. Do you want us to go down front?
I don't, well, you have a copy, so I think that they could just
Okay.
go through that as we're looking. I just had a few comments as an introduction, and then the different principals can talk about their schools. We tried to keep it to 2 PowerPoint slides for each school, and I don't think that they're going to come up and read that. You've already had a chance to look at it. For me, the issue of use of technology, there are a couple of considerations, and the very first thing for me is that the academic need should drive the device. And all too often, I see it the other way around. We have to have the device first before we really know what the need is. So I think that educators over time have gotten better about that. When I started back in the days of Commodore PETs that nobody even recognizes anymore.
I do.
You do, okay. And you thought you had to have an Apple II GS. That was, you were rocking and rolling if you had an Apple II GS. But it was about the device. Every time a device came out, you had to have the device. You weren't really thinking about the applications that you could use. And I think that's probably the biggest change with technology. So that would be the first thing. I think you'll hear all of our principals talk about equity. And I think that is it's the huge balancing piece when all students have access to technology and connectivity. That's really important because, quite frankly, we're not in a community that they all would have access if we weren't making the one-to-one use available. And I think that is a critical piece. Familiarity of the devices before assessment, because the world of education has moved to technology whether we want to or not. And I think most of us want to. But the MCAS is given on technology. The access test that our EL students take is given on technology. And if we are not using technology consistently, they're at a disadvantage. Our students are at a disadvantage on that assessment. And I think we all recognize that. And you can't just use the technology a month before the assessment. And that probably is where we started when the assessments first went digital. And then I think the fourth point that I would make is it's all about supervision. I think we set parameters in our schools with the use of technology. I know our teachers do, and I think the administration supports them in setting their parameters. And I think that parents also have that responsibility, and I think some parents do that very well and set parameters, and I think other parents don't. And they struggle with how to set those parameters and maybe don't always understand that they purchase the device, they control the device, and we try to teach our parents about the good use of those devices. So we're going to talk, each school principal will talk a little bit, and then we've also asked Jen and Jamie to be here so that we can ask some of the questions that the school committee has asked about, various security and filters that we use. So,
Mike, just
Yep.
because you mentioned the Commodores, I have to say, my first experience with a computer in a middle school, it got an Apple, gave it its own room. You had to sign your class up to go in there, and nobody knew what to do with it. You know, we had a separate lab with the Commodores,
yeah.
you know, for doing whatever, but one machine, one room, and nobody knew what to do with it.
Well, we all probably have some war stories about technology and where we started. I remember, I can go back even to the TRS-80, the Trash 80 that we called, and then, but really in I'm going to date myself because I'm going to do that a little bit later. I graduated from high school in 1970 at Weston High School. In 1969, I think Weston had one of the few computer connections in the Boston area, and it was a computer connected to a mainframe off-site. So very different. There was no personal computing, and everything that we did was learning BASIC or Fortran. So that goes back a little bit further for some people. I see a few nods and others shaking their head the other way. They don't know what I'm talking about. So, with your permission, I think we'll have Kim come up and just quickly go through the slides. And is that the way you want to do it?
It right there. So, on my slides, I tried to share the way they are used at the elementary school, and the equity piece at the elementary school is different than the equity piece in the other schools. We don't send them home. These are used in classrooms for, we're certainly building that foundation of using technology for assessment. So the way I broke it down was teacher usage, and those are different things that we do. The Ames Web is the benchmark we do 3 times a year. Our reading and math interventionists in the past use it for progress monitoring. SPED teachers use it in self-contained settings, and they use it for things like communication with students. That's really important. Breaks for students, and then targeted apps for students to do particular skills. The Smartboard is in use in our building, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then Aspen is our student information system, and we use that for everything. When a Chromebook is in a classroom or an iPad is in a classroom, they use them for things like ELA centers, and you can see all the things we do with that. So kids have the opportunity to read, they do phonics work, grammar work, spelling, etc. We also use them for centers in math, and these are things we had employed when a teacher would do a whole group lesson, and then when kids break into those centers and the teacher does a small group teaching with students, this is one of the things that kids can go to, and that's a technology center. So we had that for math. We try to make them a little bit fun. They often are games. Also important to mention that we use ST Math, and that's something that we started using a few years ago, and we used it with 3rd graders. So now we are using ST Math as an enrichment activity for 2nd graders. Mary McGinnis is our library media specialist, and when students go to the library, they go and do library work and book work, and then they also have a chance to get on computers during that specialist time. And that might be 20 minutes in the during their prep, and then that is also any multitude of games, learning to type, etc. So then, next slide. This is sort of interesting to take a look at, and it just talks about how often people are using them. So those Chromebooks, you can see the majority of our usage in the classroom is between 1 and 3 hours, or 0 and 3 hours a week. Looking at the interactive whiteboard and the smartboard, it's certainly used more than 60% of the time to at least once a day or several times a day. You often walk in a classroom and kids are finding the letters, kids are pointing to the letters that match a sound, kids are moving numbers around, kids are counting, so we use it for educational clips, games, websites that might support the curriculum. Any documents, we might take a picture of a document and post it on our whiteboards. Lots of science and social studies happens, and then we have used it, Pauline, to your point, for movement breaks and meditation. And then at our school, certainly the smartboard is the technology that's used the most often. And then iPads, we have some laptops in centers, and then we have Chromebook carts and an iPad cart.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
I do. The new,
Sure.
well, I didn't even get
Sorry.
looked at.
Sorry.
The new digital literacy standards in Massachusetts have expectations for word process, for typing skills. Is there any place in here where the kids are just working on typing skills and the rest of you are going to get the same question?
Yes, in Mary McGinnis's lab, she has typing programs for learning how to type for each grade level.
So that's her 20 minutes a week?
Yep. And then kids actually know how to operate devices better than most of the adults in my building, sadly. But the typing practice they do happens there. And that's where the formal teaching piece happens of how to type.
I have to say, I just would like to see more. And there are other aspects to those standards too that I think we need to look at and try to either work in or increase our responses to them. Look, the standards themselves are ridiculous, I admit, I acknowledge. It's not realistic what they expect us to be doing. It wasn't when it was in draft and it isn't now, but I do think it's worth looking at and seeing if we can do more.
So Mary does the teaching how to piece, and that's in the library, but all teachers are responsible for the digital literacy standards.
Because
and they do, right, because
There are, for typing skills, for example, some easy to operate online programs, and the teachers can keep track of the progress the kids are making. I've used them. I know they'd work with elementary kids as well. So,
But we use them in other content areas, was my point. So the teacher may have that in social studies, and they have to, the kids do that through program games.
okay. You know how I feel.
I know, we're using them.
NIS.
Hi. So on this slide, I gave you a breakdown of how we're using the Chromebooks. And we are lucky and fortunate that at our school we have one-to-one Chromebooks. They do not go home. They are only for school use. And one-to-one meaning that every child has access to a Chromebook when it's time to use them. They don't have to share them. The variation in time frame is typically dependent upon teachers' comfort level with using the devices, and I would say by and large though, everybody is using them appropriately, and that use varies depending on the time of year. For example, when they're diving into their research unit for writing, you'll see greater use in the classroom with regard to researching and actually coming up with their research project, whether it be a Google Slides presentation or a traditional paper, research paper, that type of thing. So it ebbs and flows with regard to how much, but As far as typing goes, our third grade teachers tend to, on their own, engage students with the Nitro Type, one of those programs you mentioned. But we don't formally teach typing because we can't fit it into our school
Yeah,
day.
no, I acknowledge that it's hard to get the time to do it. Just want to also acknowledge these standards, and
Yeah, so
we got to
that's
be
something.
getting to them. And I think all the kids should be doing it. I can't say how much time they can have. And obviously, we can't encourage your kids to do it at home because they're not taking their Chromebooks home. But I know one of the things I tried to do, and this will save me saying it when Peter's up here, is by being able to follow the kids' progress. You know, the teacher sets up the program and you can see them working through the lessons and what their words per minute are, et cetera. And I could encourage them gently and otherwise to be doing that at home as well. So,
We certainly can share links with regard to programs, and so those that want to partake. But then again, you have to remember, like, so third grade gets 30 minutes of homework, and we're already struggling with, well, we want them to read for 30 minutes,
Sure.
but they might have some math practice to do. So adding an extra layer, it's challenging to say, we want you to do this when we really want you to read, right, as our priority.
understood.
So we also, one thing that certainly changed practice in general and overall is the use of the interactive whiteboards and document cameras. We're building background knowledge with educational video clips. We're showing things, especially when you think about our population of students and how many English learners we have, how fantastic it is that we can make vocabulary come to life in science and social studies. Using those types of tools and that tool in particular. That's one of the greatest uses, I think, is being able to connect to those types of video clips, photographs. In that way, we use it for so many other things as well. And document cameras and really allowing to share student work. Students bring their work and put it under the document camera, project it, and talk about it, and it's just
I
exciting.
didn't know what that was. Document.
A document camera, yeah. Basically, whatever you put under it will show on the screen.
It's like the old, it's a modern version of the old opaque projector
Head projector, yeah.
that some people may remember.
I'm too young for that, but I couldn't.
And on the next slide, you can see some of the other ways we're using technology in other settings. The highest use, we do have library/digital literacy classes at NIS. And our enrichment aisle program uses technology a lot. Art, music, PE less so. Guidance classes use technology when we talk about cyberbullying. What else? So we did, as a staff, just so you're aware, we looked at those digital literacy standards again this year already at a staff meeting. And they are 3 to 5 grade band. That's how
Right.
they're written. So we looked at what we're already doing, where we can have the students engaged in digital literacy classes, where they can work, where there can be collaboration there with those things, and also where we feel we need support to be able to accomplish what they're asking.
I would think, for example, in coding and programming
That's the
and
one.
how realistic that is in 3rd through 5th grade, I don't know. That's why I said I think the standards are, they're written by technology people, and they'd love to have half of every school day, basically.
Okay.
Perhaps. Yeah, that is the one that's the most challenging, the
Yeah.
programming standards.
Middleman?
Good, thank you.
I'm just wondering where in our district, this isn't necessarily a question for you, but are we really teaching our kids about internet safety? And who's taking responsibility for that as we're giving our students these tools?
Sure. So at our school, that's part of the digital literacy standards is digital citizenship and how to appropriately use devices. So you'll see it happening in classroom teachers, I think, do a good amount of that. If they have digital literacy class, it's definitely happening in there. And then our guidance has taken on cyberbullying consistently across grade levels. So we're trying
Yeah.
to get it in there.
Can I just follow up on that? Do you have a digital literacy class that
Yes.
some kids
So
attend?
this year we do. This year we were able to, for fourth grade, every fourth grader has library once a week and they have digital literacy once a week.
Mhm.
And that's Laura Coburn, our library media specialist,
Yep.
is a media specialist, so she's working really hard to create that
Good.
class this school year. And third graders, this year, it's able to work in their schedule that one trimester out of the school year, they will have a digital literacy class as well, weekly. So fifth, we didn't fit it in there, but if we continue on this path, they will have had a good amount of it in third and fourth grade. And hopefully, with everything else we're
Well,
doing, they'll continue.
You know, I'd like to see more than once a week, but without a longer school day, it's not gonna happen.
I agree with you
I
there.
understand that.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, do you want to put out
Oh,
your
can I-
proviso right now about the typing?
No, I want to thank both of you, though, for the number of hours you get in here. I know that was a question that other folks on our panel had, was how much time was being spent in classes, daily and weekly. And thank you for those
Yeah,
numbers.
that was really interesting.
That is interesting, yeah.
Thank you.
So at CPS, we are a one-to-one school with Chromebooks. Every student receives a Chromebook, every teacher as well. And they do bring them back and forth from home to school. We think that this is essential really for two main reasons, access and equity. So the access issue is that in the past, when we just had a computer lab, or in the olden days, a computer, then access was really limited. So if a teacher had an idea for a lesson that involved technology, they may not be able to actually execute that lesson for weeks because of access to a computer lab or eventually a cart with computers, that kind of thing. So by going one-to-one, we've taken that access issue off the table. Whenever teachers need technology to enhance a lesson, it's available to them, and all kids have that Chromebook device. So we think that along with access, we've made sure that even though we went one-to-one, there was no mandate to use technology. So in any given classroom, you may see kids on a Chromebook in a given day or not. In some classes, they use Chromebooks more than others. But there's no mandate for a minimum number of uses of technology in any given classroom. The equity issue is even more important than the access issue. The equity issue is that we've got a very diverse student body, and in many cases, we're finding out that the only email address in the family is the student's. We found that out kind of the hard way this year with Chromebook distribution. Like, the child is the only person in the family that has an email address. Parents do not. The only computer in the household is this Chromebook that we have provided. And so if we're going to expect students to be able to use technology appropriately, they need access to that. If we're going to have assignments, and some assignments are on the Chromebooks, others aren't, but if some of them are, or if we're going to have them collaborate and learn skills like collaboration through things like the Google Suite, all kids need to have access, the same access, to be able to use that in and outside of school. So access and equity is really crucial. If we were to make a drastic decision to go back from one-to-one or back from going home to school, it would be malpractice. We would be setting our kids back decades. So we are hopeful that we'll be able to continue. We use technology in a variety of ways. I broke it down by humanities and STEM. There's many overlaps between the two, but just so you can get a sense of some of the things that we use the Chromebooks for. Again, the Google Suite is kind of a primary platform. Most classrooms do have a Google Classroom, which is simply a way to post assignments and track assignments, post other information and resources. Google Documents and slides are are interactive, so multiple users can be within the same document, editing it at the same time. The presentation that you're seeing right now is an example of the administrative team using Google Slides to be able, we're all working on the document at the same time, to be able to create individual slides. You can, I don't need to read the list here, but there are many uses throughout the school, and it's about balance. So all of our teachers are pretty good about having that balance between some things that use the devices, some things that don't. And when kids get home, some of their assignments may be posted on Google Classroom, but they're also written in their assignment notebooks, so they don't necessarily always have to be on the Chromebook. The crucial thing is really setting limits at home. So we set plenty of limits here. We monitor what students do here while they're in school through Go Guardian, which you'll hear about later. And at home, parents need to be also paying attention and watching and setting limits, and not having kids keep the devices overnight in their bedroom, charge them somewhere else, and setting a time limit to have them stop using the device at a certain time. We give the devices for educational use. We can monitor the use, as you'll hear later, and at home, parents can put in place parental controls on their network to be able to do similar kind of monitoring and to prevent kids from using them for non-educational purposes. So it's really about a partnership between home and school.
Is that a conversation you guys have with parents when you issue the Chromebook?
It is. We used to do a Chromebook distribution here in this room. Now we distribute the Chromebooks in school, but at our parent meetings, we've separated by grade level. That's a key piece of the presentation that I give at each of the open houses for the grade levels. And it's in multiple communications. Plus, we teach kids about the expectations as well in digital citizenship on a regular basis. So in anticipation of some of the future questions as well, like in sixth grade, our library media specialist, Becky Hickman, will be integrating, pushing into sixth grade classrooms to teach that digital literacy, digital citizenship component. So all kids in sixth grade will be exposed to that. All teachers certainly address that on a regular basis, but we want to make sure that every single sixth grader has a formalized way to be taught that. But the parents, we address it through those open house presentations. And then some of the, I give those workshops periodically throughout the year, and often that's one of the areas of focus for those workshops. Not that those are well attended, but the open houses.
Say all 7 parents who arrived.
Something you said struck me when you say that sometimes in families this is the only computer in the house. And my kids are 19 and 21, so we didn't have laptops coming home, but I think we were somewhat computer literate. We made a rule in our house that the desktop was in the living room so that we could walk by at any time when either of the kids were doing their homework. Computers never went to the bedrooms, phones never went to the bedrooms. It was just a rule we put in place from day one. But here we've got a scenario that there isn't any technology in the house. There's probably very little, and I'm making an assumption here that if there isn't a computer, there's probably less technology, information, and education. And I feel that, and I'm sure you've talked about this, and maybe you do this already, but we know that parents don't show up necessarily for open house, and the parents that we're trying to maybe reach are not necessarily getting the emails or the phone calls. They may not have cell phones. So is there something that we can do, maybe through our library, to send pictures as well as narratives in different languages so that we could break down and give sort of recommendations of what does good technology at home look like? Because if I'm a parent and I don't have a computer or a cell phone and I have no idea even what the internet is, I could see the worry. And yes, we say, and I'm a believer that it also has to be a partnership with a home, but I also feel that being the responsible provider of this, that could we make sure that we've got some information going out to parents and opportunities to come in and have that dialogue in their language. If it's an EL family, make sure we've got a translator, because I think that the ugly reality is the internet is anywhere your kid is, right? Whether they have a computer in their house, if they don't, their friend is going to have one. So I think we have that responsibility to help teach that. Dating myself, I worked at Orange Street Video when you used to actually go and rent a video, if anyone remembers what that is. Fernando, don't say anything. But I was surprised at how many students would come in and try to rent an R-rated video. And we had a policy, we wouldn't rent it, but we would telephone the parent and say, your child is here, and they'd say, just a minute, thinking that they'd put them on the phone and say, get out. An 18-year-old would be down there within 10 minutes, or a parent would be down there to rent out the R-rated video. So, that's a reality that our kids are going to be in families that have different values and different rules. So keeping that in mind, if you're not doing it, would you consider doing that? Certainly, because that really struck me. I never thought about parents and nobody in the family having a computer, and all of a sudden, bingo, here's this opening to the world.
You just gave this dragon to them that they don't know how to control.
Right. And I do believe, and I've said it before, it is parents' responsibility, but if you're going from like the assumption there's zero knowledge there, can we at least give some support to show them what good technology use at home looks like?
Okay.
I'm done.
That's your item.
Can't wait for your answer to
There's a
that.
lot there. I mean, I think the short answer is yes. I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. There are resources available already. We have to film our own videos to be able to do that. We just have to figure out a way to make sure that all families can access those videos and those resources. Just one clarification, while it's the only computer in the household, it's rarely the only device. Just about everybody has a smartphone.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm just wondering, after hearing from Kim and Eve Marie and seeing to what extent that they use technology, how do you feel that transition from our fifth graders who use it in the classroom 3 to 5 hours a week possibly, to giving our sixth graders a Chromebook to take home? I mean, do you feel that that's a reasonable transition?
I do.
You do? Okay, thank you. To me, I feel like there's a big gap there. The amount of technology, the amount of teaching that's going into computer skills, computer literacy, into handing them a Chromebook as they enter the doors in sixth grade. I feel like we're missing something.
I'd like to follow up on that. Jen has mentioned it before. Is it really necessary? I fully accept the equity issue. Well, I was, but I hadn't thought about this particular issue at the time because I wasn't a parent. So I didn't see how much they were getting used at home for other stuff. And some of those will be in my technical questions for I guess it'll probably be Jamie. But does it have to be from day one? Could it not be after a reasonable period of the kids being introduced to internet safety and digital literacy and those sort of 6 weeks or something, you're not denying access to learning that way, but you're giving the sixth graders a bit of a head start in understanding the uses, the dangers, etc., before you're sending the computers home. That's different than denying equity or anything else.
Before you answer that, let me just say this. Because Steve, I feel mixed messages. When we talk about the digital requirement, and you were asking these guys to give more, and now he's giving too much. And I agree with Jen, there is a gap, but we got to figure out, are we meeting the requirements and all that encompasses, okay? Because I'm struggling with that. I struggle with the fact that nobody knows how to write anymore or talk to people because they're on the computers and the smartphones too much. So that's my struggle with it. But so we got to figure out before, we put Peter on the hot seat because he's giving the Christmas present away in the sixth grade. Where are we supposed to be and how do we get there?
Could I say I'm not intending to put Peter on the hot seat?
I'm not saying you
I
are.
fully support one-to-one, and I fully support these units going home. perhaps at the right point, though.
Yeah, I
By
agree.
seventh and
There's-
eighth grade, maybe. Sixth grade, I think we need to look at the first period of time.
I'm agreeing, but I'm just saying, is 5 to 8 hours a week where we're supposed to be in elementary? God forbid, it needs to be more.
Three
I
to
wanna know how-
5 at NIS.
Well,
But
whatever.
I think that's a Luddite sort of philosophy, Steve.
Me?
Yes.
A Luddite.
I think that the kids have a very broad
That's
exposure,
hilarious.
a very broad exposure to these devices. By the time there were, shall we say, very few electronic
But for those
virgins
kids
coming
who
into
don't,
sixth
Tim,
grade.
For those kids that don't, it's not
It's-
it's not our responsibility to give them an open
How many
box. that
How many
we have
times have you
ourselves.
seen kids playing with the phones, playing with their parents' iPads, playing over at their buddy's house?
Right. But when you're seeing how we're educating our kids going up to middle school, there is something missing. They are using one-to-one Chromebooks in 5th grade, 3 to 5 hours a week, being handed a Chromebook in 6th grade.
So we need to see where the gap, as I was saying, we need to see where the gap is. Is Peter too much, or is he where he's supposed to be, and we're not enough? So we need to see
I agree.
where that gap
I
should be,
agree.
and if we need to dial back Peter and beef you guys up. That's why I'm saying you can't expect him, because I don't know if he knows that answer right this moment and second. So that's a conversation to be had.
Well, since everybody likes to have questionnaires sent out, I would be very interested to see on the first day of 6th grade, find out from the kids how much exposure they've already had. And I think we're way behind the wheel on this one, because I think the kids have a tremendous exposure.
Tim, how come we're not way behind the wheel? There are not that many schools in the United States, even in Massachusetts, where the kids are getting computers to take home full-time.
Or in China.
We were at the cutting edge of doing that, and I'm not criticizing that aspect. In fact, there's a heck of a lot of good stuff. For those of you who don't know about Google Classroom, kids can have access 24/7 to their schoolwork, to their assignments, to writing and reading, the stuff that the teachers want them to do at home when they have time to do it. It's great stuff. The concern, I think, there'll be more of a concern when we get to talking to the technical people about access to YouTube, for example. If you'd like to step in at that time, that's going to be a part of this conversation. I'm only, others may differ, talking about the first few weeks of 6th grade when the kids for the first time are looking at the prospect of having a computer to take home, making sure that they have a full understanding of digital citizenship and internet safety and so on and so forth. I'm not talking about even limiting the 6th grade, definitely not 7th and 8th grade.
So.
Be reasonable.
Thank you for trying to save me, so I appreciate it.
No.
And I will try to save myself by not digging too deep into this. One of the reasons that we front-loaded the open house with parents this year with 6th graders in particular
Yeah.
was kind of to mesh what we used to do in this room with the Chromebook distribution. So we didn't actually hand the kids the Chromebooks on that night, but we encouraged everybody to come, parent and student, so they both heard the same message, which a big portion of that evening was focused on this idea of digital citizenship, leaving a digital footprint, that, you know, what you put out there, once you put it out there, is no longer in your control. And we did all of that education in that first night. So we front-loaded that. And then I would argue that if you spoke to the 6th grade teachers, they spend a lot of time in the first weeks talking to kids about these very issues. And again, with the addition of the library media specialist, she will then come in and reinforce that throughout the year. I think the time is actually perfect in 6th grade to be able to start this process. The one thing that, in terms of like whether or not we need to do more at the elementary or not, the one thing is the area of typing. That's where I think we find some common ground. If we can squeeze that in a little bit more before they get to us, kids are going to be even more set
Yeah.
up for it.
It's one of the easier of those ridiculous standards to keep track of, words per minute and accuracy and so on and so forth. Some of the rest of the stuff is just silly. I think we should be contemplating those first few weeks of sixth grade. What was the turnout for the sixth grade open house in terms of percentage of parents? How many sixth graders are there and how many of them had parents there?
70%, 75%, maybe higher.
Of 100 and how many kids?
100, close to 130.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
Can I just jump in on this? I do think, again, the responsibility of giving the information to the students and the parents. I think our sixth grade team would have a lot of information on this, and I know Tracy's in the audience, not to put you on the spot, but I think it would be, helpful to sort of hear from teachers what they're seeing and the ability and the skill set of the kids coming in. But in my opinion, I don't think that a student in 1 or 2 or 3 weeks is going to change their behavior on a computer because they are, instead of going home with a laptop, they're going to be given information on how to be a good citizen with the laptop. I don't think it's going to change that piece of it. If we've got all of the securities and everything in place, I think the education to the parents, because again, I think it's this is up to the parents, right? Once they go home, it's a parent thing. So I would love to see more information or training or pieces going home to the parent about what does it look like, and the implications of having a device at home, right? What does that mean?
Parenting.
Well, yes. What a concept.
Peter being the great Satan delivering these weapons to the children.
Yeah.
I think the kids have a broad exposure before they ever get the Chromebooks.
I agree.
John, you're up. We've solved all the problems.
Listen, I have nothing to say to Joe.
I have nothing to say to John.
Kubish so enjoyed getting to go forth first presentation. We did a deeply scientific study at the high school, slice numbers that you're looking at. The reason that I put the notes there was each department had something that I thought was particularly of interest. English said 90% of their homework is reading. While we issue kids books, some kids like a Kindle or they like to read on a device. So although 90% is reading, some might do it on a device. Mathematics, we have a computer science class. Arguably 100% of class time and homework is spent on a device. Social studies assignment contingent, they do a lot with Google Classroom, but for students that want a print copy of something, if they have an assignment, they make that available. In the sciences, AP Biology had the highest. They were at about 60%, but they do online labs and online dissections. AP Environmental Science had the lowest usage. World Language uses devices for speaking and listening. Art, music, some of those classes are 100% online. If you're taking a music technology class, you're using the composing software. Same with digital photo and graphic design. And the rest of that, vocational, the shops clearly use it the least. In criminal justice and nursing use it the most. Some gifts. Technology use is both class and teacher specific, as the last slide clearly pointed out. No class reported greater than 50% of class time. That's actually a lie because AP Biology said 60% of class time. So they're given options for print and hard copy, from guidance to Latin. Those are some of the programs that we use for technology.
I have to say, I like the way you presented your information. I like to see that on CPS. And even though everything you said, it's not really reflected here. I'm sorry,
I didn't understand that.
But it's
Neither did I, but I'll agree, yes.
But it's interesting to see, and as you can tell, we know the world is a digital world. You have to take your driver's test on the computer now. There's no, except you do have to drive a car. I'm sorry. They're written tests.
But that car is run by a computer.
It is.
And eventually, it's not going to be. Jetsons are coming.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
So it's not as a laughing matter. I mean, we're serious here about what we're concerned about. I want to emphasize that first and foremost. But we need to find out so that we are much more comfortable with the gap. And if there is a huge gap, fix the gap so that we're comfortable with it and we don't pull our students backwards. That's kind of important. Now, we're a little bit talking about, trying to get the cart after the horses got out. Is that right?
No, but close.
You're mixing metaphors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
I think we know where you're going.
I have that concern because, again, I'm not harping and picking on you, Steve. It's just that you were saying that there were digital, what is the word you use? Requirements? Standards.
There are new standards,
Yeah,
yes.
are we meeting the standards? Are we meeting the standards? And it sounds like, Peter, you're exceeding the standards. You're exceeding the standards. So let's get on track so that we are comfortable.
Well, I think you may be misunderstanding me. I don't think Peter's meeting the standards.
I
None
didn't
of
say
us
that.
are, and none of us are gonna.
I didn't say
Peter's
that.
spending more Peter, where are you? Peter is definitely at CPS expending more time. And 95% of it is time well spent. I'm concerned about those first few weeks of sixth grade. But the Google Classroom stuff, we haven't even talked about using the computers for map testing 2 or 3 times a year, at least in CPS, which I'm told by the teachers, because they never did it for social studies, is very useful information to get in math and English. MCAS now is done on computers as well. I'm not talking about backing off, although we'll have a slightly different discussion when we get to the tech folks. And I think Peter's going to want to weigh in on that. We're never going to meet those standards.
Don't say
No.
never.
No, we're
Don't
not.
say never.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll send you a copy and then you can
I don't
have
have
an
any
open
questions, but
mind.
thank you for the presentation.
Colin?
I don't have questions. No
Okay.
questions. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
I did actually. I had a small comment. I was surprised at the low percentages of usage in the classrooms. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just expected it to be higher.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's doing the English learner education?
Kelly's headed down.
Oh, don't make her come down.
Sure.
You can.
Sure. To Mike's.
So, I'll talk as I come down. So, English
The
learner.
microphone won't be able to pick you up, Kelly. Yeah.
Take your time.
I know. Can't someone else?
Don't worry, we're not watching you.
And technically, we do have to get you to a microphone. So,
Yeah.
And why don't I move? Maybe that'll be quicker.
It's fine. Celebrate walking. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Kelly.
Hi. So for English learner education, our students do all kinds of similar activities like we heard of earlier from other schools. In addition, they do things like they make videos as exit tickets. We have Brittany here, Miss Beal from 6th grade math. She taught an ESL section last year. And the kids made great little videos saying, this is what I learned today, Pythagorean, blah, blah, math. Fabulous. Our students listen to books on the computer. They record themselves talking and then listen to themselves because we're really focused on pronunciation and pacing and language. And teachers plan for a balance. My ESL teachers use Chromebooks, and they know students need to be listening, speaking, reading, and writing. They need to be talking to humans. They need to be practicing with computers. And if you actually clicked on that picture, does it work still, or did we cut it?
It was made into a PDF. I didn't know it was in that interactive.
Oh, sad, because it was going to sum up the human aspect of video. One of our teachers last year, at the end of the year, Samantha, and I think Ms. Beal did the same project. At the end of the year, our students made videos to give to their next year's teachers saying what I would like my teachers to know about me. And they shared things about their jobs, how they help their families after school, how they might not have good grades, but they're really good at X, Y, or Z. Some of them shared very personal things about trauma, not too personal, but somewhat personal about maybe some traumas they've had and help that they need and what they think their strengths are. So I think that was a great use of technology. And they did have, we had the shared sign-off sheet on that. Access online, is this also a PDF? So none of these links are clean?
I didn't realize I could copy this into.
Okay, so also last year, and again, in a few weeks, I'll be showing you Access. The Access test that all English learners take, test them in the 4 domains of listening, speaking, reading, writing, all online. So literally, the computer will have a voice and show kids an explanation for the water cycle, for example. And then the computer will prompt the student with the question, what's the 3rd stage in the water cycle according to this diagram? And the kid has to speak into the computer and say, wow, blah, blah, water cycle. So they definitely need not only practice speaking on kind of on cue, learning something very quickly and then talking about it, but also it's WIDA Access for IELTS 2.0. They have to write online. They have to be able to scroll back 4 pages to see the text that they scroll forward and then enter the answer to. So it's much more complicated than MCAS as far as technology goes. So you could click on any grade, but it's late. We don't have to look, but you have this. You can click on it at home if you like. The kids need from grade kindergarten experience with technology. It's all about balance and making sure that the types of activities we're doing are meaningful and that we're not just giving them worksheets on a Chromebook, because that I don't go for. I don't need worksheets, whether electronic or paper. We don't need them. So our ESL teachers and other SEI teachers are pretty innovative, and I think they do a great job using technology.
Thank you, Pam.
I would like to compliment that. I had the opportunity 2 years ago when I was the alleged or purported technology person at CPS to spend quite a bit of time in the ELL classroom, and the stuff that was happening there was absolutely magnificent. The different types of activities, the not just presentations that the kids put together, but the various programs that she was using, and the kids loved it. It was great stuff, and I assume it's being kept up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. They do a great job. I'm lucky. We're lucky.
Questions? Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. Oh, make me hobble down here. No question. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So I understand there.
Take your spot.
Okay. So I'm glad that I got to go last of the administrators because most of our special ed students are in inclusion classes. So all those uses of technology that the principals already spoke about, our students are also using. So I'll just highlight a few additional things. We do have some separate online curricula that our special ed students use, including Unique Learning Systems, News to You. We use some programs to come up with like picture icons. That would be the Board Maker, symbol sticks, the PECS, the Picture Exchange Communication System. There's like a little picture of that in the red. That's basically, or the other one in the black case, but basically students that are nonverbal or don't have good verbal skills can demonstrate what they want or communicate by using pictures, and there might be like a kind of a Velcro system. It's kind of like old school technology, as is the switch, which we don't have any students using at this point, but switches are often used for students with intensive disabilities just to demonstrate like cause and effect. Some of the other things that we're using are software programs. It is great to have the Chromebooks because they already have a lot of built-in things. We have the Read and Write Google app, but programs such as speech to text, Dragon Naturally Speaking, but again, the Chromebooks have some of that built in, or text to speech, so they can underline and the program would read it aloud for them. So those are great ways to really provide equal access to the curricula for our students with learning disabilities. FM tower systems, it's a different kind of technology. I don't know if you've heard of it, but for students with either a hearing impairment or students with central auditory processing, we have these towers in some of the classrooms. Sometimes it is a mic to the teacher and goes to the tower. Sometimes it goes from the mic of the teacher to students' individual headset, and it just helps them to either pay attention or to hear properly what the teacher is saying. And then use of iPads for communication and reinforcement. As Ms. Kubish mentioned, we often are using iPads for communication as well as for reinforcers. For our young students with autism or students with behavioral issues, the iPad is a very easy to use device to help them to learn how to request things, help them to communicate with others. If you turn to the next slide, this is one example of a program. It's called Proloquo to Go, and it is an app that you can put on an iPhone or iPad, iPad Air, and basically you can program in different things, and the student just hits a button, and it will talk for the student. I'd like to do more in technology. I think it's an unlimited field. It really helps our students not only to be able to access learning, but also to demonstrate what they're learning, helps them to be more included. And I think with the use of computers, because not too long ago, having a computer or access was like a special thing, and now it's just a universal thing. So our kids don't feel stigmatized. They can access their learning through use of technology, and they just look like everybody else, so it's great. That's it.
Bobby?
No, thank you.
Jen?
No, thank you very much.
Steve?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'd like you, the reason we inserted this graphic was we updated the one that was originally in the presentation, and it really gives you a better idea of the kind of things we're doing with GoGuardian, which I'll have Jamie take over in just a minute to talk about that. But two of the things that you've talked a lot about today is the use of Chromebooks in the classroom, and maybe families that might not have laptops or computers at home. And I want to point out that in many cases, these families actually get an internet interactive TV in a box, 60 inches, for $250. We pulled one out the other day for the electrician's class. And you turn the thing on, and it finds your wireless and wants to go on the internet. And you can go select YouTube right away or all kinds of things. So just keep in mind that we have mature minds in the way we're thinking about computers and the use of them. But in many ways, these children that are growing up with these devices, they may not have a MacBook or a PC in their house, but they do have a smartphone, or they have an interactive TV or an iPad. So those are the things that we're working with. On the other end of the spectrum, technology at the school, we're responsible for far more than just giving out a Chromebook or ordering them and making sure they're in their hands. So we're trying to keep up with all of this, and we want to be able to implement many more, things that'll work within the classroom or help the teachers do that. But realistically, we have a huge network with probably 4,000 devices connecting on any one day. So we're trying. With that, I'll introduce Jamie, and he can probably explain a little bit about the slide, and then take it from there.
Okay, so the bar graph that we're looking at right now is from the program that we're using for the Chromebooks. It's called GoGuardian. I'm sure you heard it a couple times already during everyone else's presentation. This is just a snapshot of what we did earlier last week. So it's not really a fair graph to show what, when we get further into the school year, what the activities are, because some of the Chromebooks weren't distributed yet. And obviously you can see it going up as the week progresses. You can see that the key below will show you the different colors. So the green is what's showing you to the sites that they were allowed to go to. That would be fall underneath the acceptable use of the device. And then the next bar over would be red, which thankfully is a smaller the percentage of all the use being on, and that's showing you the black sites that they're trying to get to. And typically what the black sites are video games, what we're finding, and then inappropriate videos on YouTube or whatnot. And then you go over to the next bar, which is a orange, and that's flagged activities. Basically, you can track what some students are going to that typically wouldn't be a site that you would want them to go to, but it's not anything that is going to be detrimental to their education or whatnot. And it gets all of this data comes back to me, and I can go over it. And we'll get into that later on. And then, of course, YouTube is a heavy hitter with the children these days. So we'll show you basically how many videos they're looking at a given day. And that's pretty much it for that bar graph. So you have to remember when you're inside the school building that they're going through two filters. We have a school filter for all the other devices that the school has, such as laptops, and even these smart interactive smart boards. Some of the newer boards can connect to the Wi-Fi as well, and it's going through that filter as well. Anyone who is using their cell phone who has Wi-Fi access. But speaking on the Chromebook side, GoGuardian is our main filter. And the reason why there's two filters is because Barracuda is just the inside of our network, and the GoGuardian is something that we can push out to the Chromebooks so we can filter them no matter where they are, be it in the school or at their home, or if they're on vacation somewhere and they decide to take it with them for homework, we hope. So basically going to talk more about the GoGuardian because that's what the Chromebooks use. There's a bunch of features in GoGuardian. One of the main ones that works really well inside the classroom is GoGuardian for teachers. So each teacher has their own login to the GoGuardian. Basically, they can import their classes from Google Classroom. And then from that, any given day or block that they're in for that class, they can go in and activate it, and that will give them a screenshot of all of their students' Chromebooks. From there, they can make sure that those kids are on task and doing what they were asked to. They can even blank the screens. They have the ability also, if they notice that they have extra tabs open on their Chromebook, to go to each tab and exit them out of that. So they have a lot of abilities, and that will actually keep them on track, which is a very useful feature that I know the middle school is using heavily, and I do know that some of the high school teachers are using it as well. And then one of the other features that the GoGuardian has is theft recovery. So basically, when I get an email that a child's Chromebook is missing, or they didn't return it at the end of the school year, I can put that individual Chromebook into a special OU, and then when that computer comes back online, it pings back to me, because I'm the administrator of the GoGuardian, and it will give me a location of where it is. It will also show me what student is trying, if there's a student in our school system who's trying to log into it, so that might help me track down where, or who's trying to use it. And we've had to use this quite a bit of times, and there was an instance where we had a student who went to Jamaica for a family trip, and she gave her Chromebook to a family member, and it kept pinging me, and I was like, where is this? Like, couldn't find out, and then I zoomed in on it, and I was like, okay, the Chromebooks in Jamaica, and we ended up getting it back. And then, so it has worked out very well so far. And GoGuardian's always adding new features as well. One thing I would like to say is that we do not have access to any of their web cameras. So I can't turn it on or to see what they're doing.
That's good.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
It's very concerned. When they did first first come out, they did have that feature, and I did not turn it on because I didn't. That's just super creepy. So we also have to keep in mind that the filters are dynamic, and what that means is that we select categories that we feel like the students should not be going to. So I'm not sitting there adding sites and like, I don't have enough time in the day to be doing it. So we set the categories, and we pay GoGuardian, and so they typically will flag sites to the category it should be in. So that's saying one day a class might be doing a project and they may be able to go to this site, and the next day GoGuardian might put it in that category that we have for blocked, and unfortunately that happens. But if you just let me know, I can unblock it very easily. You have to walk a fine line of how much access you want to give them. Obviously, if I can lower the filter so it won't block as much, but at the same time, we don't want that for our children. But if you block too much stuff, then you have problems with classroom management where the teachers are trying to teach something and they can't get it to work for their class, and it's disruptive to their class and the flow of their class. Also with GoGuardian, it filters through their school-given Google account. So let's say if they're not using a school device, but they're at home and they are using a Chrome and they're logged into their Chrome website, it will filter a little bit of that, but they can use a different web browser if they want to do that. So it's a little bit more extra protection if they're using another device, but that's not really, that's their device, so they can choose what to do with that. That's basically what I have for presentations. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions.
Yes. So it sounds like you do have control with GoGuardian in blocking sites.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And then when they go outside the boundary and pings you or whatever, as part of the discipline agreement, you can call them on it.
Yes, and we have,
So-
and I usually will forward it. to
Well, that's
her.
great. I
Yes.
think that's awesome. Now, the other side of that is, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, there's another feature that I didn't get to talk about is that it actually monitors students' activities as well as it will look for different trends in a student's activity, where if they're starting to look for like self-harm stuff, it will flag that, and it will also give me a email letting me know, and I usually forward that to the school as well. And then, especially if they're trying to look for explicit videos on YouTube.
What
which I'm
about
not
if
getting
they wanted
to.
to shop for a weapon?
Yes.
Could you
it will,
do something
yes,
like
you
that?
could do different flags that will show up in that. And this was a feature that was added last year. So.
And how about an automatic lock at 10 p.m.? I mean, something to think about.
That's something we could.
A 6th and 8th grader through 8th grade should not, to me,
That's
be, in
very
my opinion,
interesting.
be on the computer at midnight.
So I'm not
Is
sure
that
we
possible?
could actually do that by class. And I challenged that my daughter many times was up till 2 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
because she had 2 AP classes her senior year, so.
But in the middle school, you could,
You
If
can
we
ping it
could
by the
do it
IP
by
address or
class,
something.
Right.
surely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that
Well,
question is for Jamie. Can you do it by individual classes or grade
We
levels?
can do it by
That
individual
is a feature that we
Chromebooks.
should do, because I do have GoGuardian, even the filter, I have it at a higher standard in NIS.
Yeah.
And NES is even higher, what's getting blocked. So I can do it by the OU.
Could I ask the
as classes.
introductory technical questions? that there have been rumors to the contrary, but it was my understanding, and I hope it's still true, that the Chromebooks that we provide can only access the internet through npsk.org.
No, he just said that. That's not the case.
Well, no, that's what, that was on separate devices. The devices we provide, the Chromebooks, used to only be able to access the internet or anything through npsk.org. Is that still the case, or are there
Like,
problems with
You have
that?
to be logged in with your NPSK.org
Right.
user account.
And therefore, the filters
Yes.
are in place.
Yeah, that's a two-tiered thing with
Yeah.
our Google admin
Yeah,
console. as well,
okay.
Yes.
And, I mean, because we, having provided those computers, have a responsibility and a liability. And I just, because there have been rumors of kids finding ways to use the Chromebooks to access without going through npsk.org. And I would like to put those rumors to rest.
Yes, you cannot do that.
Now, let me make sure you understand the question.
Yeah.
So I have a Chromebook. I'm a high school personnel, whatever. That Chromebook can only access the internet through the npsk.org site. I can't go onto my own.
I think
That's what
I
he's
might
asking.
be confused. You're not limited to the NPSK site
Okay.
per se, but if you found one of our devices and you're not part of our school system, you would not be able to log on to that device unless you had one of our user accounts. There's no guest mode or whatnot.
You can go to
Something that unlocks.
NPSK from a separate desktop.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the Chromebooks we provide can only access through npsk.org.
No,
With-
that's
So we're,
not what he
we're,
said.
we're talking about two different things here.
Right.
Yes.
We're talking about
The-
accounts versus.
The,
Right.
yes, the Chromebook, you have to log on to the Chromebook.
Right.
Ones that the school provides, you must log on with a school login that you
Right.
have been provided with. That gets you onto the Chromebook. Then there are things you can do within the Chromebook. One of them is accessing the internet.
Oh,
That
no,
will
no,
go
I'm sorry, I
through the
understand. We're
GoGuardian.
just using different wording. You can't
Right.
operate a school Chromebook without a school access account.
Yes.
Right.
And that means that whatever you do from that point forward is subject to some filtration.
Yes, it's getting recorded, and I can go back months back in time. to see
Okay.
Every site that they've gone to.
In
So it's getting
addition,
recorded, but you still can go outside the limitation, somewhat. You can access your own personal internet and not NPS's internet to do stuff.
No.
That's where the problem is. All he's saying is, you can log onto the computer
You
through
can't,
NPS, but you can go outside it. There are ways. Am I
Yeah.
understanding what you're saying?
so maybe if I describe what happens with a child that brings in their own Chromebook that they've purchased. So they can open up their Chromebook, they may not even have a login page. And we don't have control over that Chromebook. But when they go to Google and use their school email account from their Chromebook to log in, that's when GoGuardian kicks in on that Chromebook for the things that they are doing once they are logged in on the site. So there's a differentiation between, this is a device where the actual device, the login, and where they go is all controlled if it's a school one. But if it's their own personal device, and it can be a Mac, it can be a PC, those personal devices are not controlled when they first open up, but when the child logs in to their npsk.org account to go look at their Google Classroom or do their homework, that's when the GoGuardian will kick in on that part of it.
What if they log into their Chromebook, but they don't go to their
They
account,
can-
their Google account?
They are automatically,
They have no choice?
they have
they
no
have no
choice.
choice.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to make sure of.
They can't go, no. They can only go to the software that is installed on that Chromebook. Now, one of the issues, not really an issue, but one of the wonderful things about the Chromebook is we do allow access to YouTube because so many teachers want to use
Yeah.
that. And that's where, okay, you're opening up some software, but you want GoGuardian to monitor the individual videos that are being looked at in that software.
Right.
So we don't want to shut down YouTube. YouTube has a lot of incredibly useful information, especially for our teachers. But we do want to monitor what's going on, and that's what Jamie can see.
And that filtration is already taking place
Yes.
Yes.
for YouTube?
Yep.
Okay,
So
because,
the two tiers, even outside of GoGuardian, I have it, capabilities in the Google admin console that runs our whole.
when the kids are outside the school building.
Yes.
A technical question?
Because Google owns
When a kid takes a Chromebook home, do they have to have wireless at home? Or can they hook up through a satellite? What is, the equity issue made me think of that. If they've got the Chromebook and they take it home, do they have to have wireless at home?
So primarily, yes, you'd have to
Yeah.
have wireless. They do make dongles, which is a USB device that they can
Yeah.
wire it in, but that's not something we've been,
And we don't have
We don't
people
give those
asking for
out.
those?
we haven't had any.
Yeah, you can play with
requests.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just wondering.
You can even turn your phone into a hotspot, so they can get internet access
Yeah.
that way, like I know you have in the past.
I've used my phone, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When we knew this topic was coming up, because I agree, a lot of teachers are using a lot of things on YouTube. And the concept of shutting off YouTube, which I'm sure you could do, is not viable. I'm glad to hear that there's some level of filtration taking place there, because, boy, I've been around and I was not going with my school account. I'm retired. I was just checking when I knew this was coming up. And there's some pretty raunchy stuff on there.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable so far that the raunchy stuff is pretty well being eliminated, or is it being flagged, or how's that going?
So, yes, answer is I am comfortable with it. That said, if a YouTube video is mislabeled, they're labeled by tags,
Yep.
it potentially could get through the filter.
Could it possibly be falling into this category then? Flagged.
The flag.
Yes, it would be falling into that category.
And if you see something there flagged,
Say something.
you can administer it
Oh, yes.
to block it.
Yep, I do.
I mean, I know you've unblocked things.
Yes.
I can remember a number of
There are plenty
times
of blocking.
when we, the staff, got blocked on things.
Yes.
And almost instantaneously, with an email to you, you got them unblocked and that was taken care of. But I think one of the concerns, and I'm not the only one who has expressed this concern, is unlimited access to YouTube is not a good thing.
I would agree, yes.
So I think to finish my thing is I would like it looked into about the shut-off time for different.
Yeah.
levels. I think that's
Sure,
important.
I think that's a great idea.
Big brother.
No, I think that's a great idea.
I
Questions?
just a question. So when you do receive a flag, can you just tell me like the process you go through and what happens once? I mean, you just immediately contact the administrator. I'm just wondering
It
what
depends
the.
on what the level of it is.
Okay.
Usually they're pretty harmless. It's just, but obviously there are some sensitive stuff that I will have to pass on.
But they identify the site for you.
Oh, it gives me everything.
Yeah.
It gives me the exact time that they were going to.
Yep.
Why it got flagged. And usually they're very harmless flag sites. And then, but if it's something serious, I will definitely pass it along to that.
Give us an example of something not so big deal and something that's a big deal that's happened actually.
So students going to like a game site, but it could be teeter tot, like, it's hard, we can't just block all games because some of the games are
Learning.
they're educational.
Mhm.
So it's kind of tricky, so it will block it or flag it because it's saying it's a game, but you said you would let educational games go through, so that'd be something that would be harmless. The other flags that would probably be on the higher end of it is when students are looking at drugs or if we're looking at self-harm. So those I would automatically pass on. I don't know if that answers your
Pass on to who?
administration of that building. So I monitor this both for all schools, but primarily the biggest issues have been in the middle school and high school.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even just what they've searched for, not necessarily that they've found to an inappropriate search, just that they've typed in an inappropriate search gets flagged. Jamie will share that with me, we'll talk to the kids, talk to the parents. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
All my questions have been answered.
And you only work
Thank you.
23 hours a day, is that?
Thanks, Jamie. That was really good information.
If I may.
Yeah.
We have been approached in the last 2 days by this new sport. And Jamie, I had to call Jamie down because of course he's, monitoring these things. And there's a new sport that involves gaming, video gaming. And we've vetted it out. And we've been advised by the principal at the high school that this is viable and we will look into it and we'll find out what it's going to entail. But this is the kind of thing where it's actually being recognized as a sport. You may know more how to describe it than I do, but I had, 3 seniors march in my office and my teachers emailed you 3 times and you haven't responded, and we were just a little swamped the first couple of weeks of school, but it was something when we finally were able to talk about it. Dr. Bucky had approved moving forward to look at it, and so we're doing that.
Well, I'm assuming that the necessary precaution will be taken so that this doesn't get out of hand. Do you know what I mean? Too much of that gaming sport and it takes away from something else, and then you got a problem. I'm just saying. It's just like anything else.
We're gonna only be unlocking this one game that they're starting off with. I'm sure it will grow in whatever esports they want to get into because it's growing in popularity very rapidly.
I can imagine.
And it will only be turned on after school hours. So it won't be during school.
Well, as long as it doesn't take away from academics even after school hours, I would just be concerned.
It will.
Those things can get out of control very easily, obsession with that, and the gaming, and no sleep, and taking it out on
I
the
think we just
administrators
have
at
to, we
school.
have to just be mindful of Big Brother.
Balance,
It's
yeah.
like,
Yes.
I think what we've talked about is great. I think that, I don't know, I would hate to see us saying, okay, so you do your homework between 5 and 7, and we're
No.
gonna turn it off at 8.
All I'm saying is these are our
That's-
devices,
yeah.
and we're not providing them for those purposes. Think
Well,
about it that way.
this-
Yeah.
And if,
Pauline, that would make you a Luddite.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Committee discussion, votes to be taken. The draft calendar 2019-2020. Can I have a
Move
motion
to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Crowdfunding policy, GBEBD.
Move to approve.
Second.
Well, could I ask, this says new policy for consideration. We saw something like this in the spring. I thought we approved it at the time.
No, we didn't.
No.
Apparently
We did
didn't.
not.
No.
So this is our second reading of this?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was one typo there on students that we've,
Yeah,
that I
and the
fixed.
one clarification I wanted to make to be sure of is that before any staff member can seek online funding, they have to get their principal's approval. Is that how I read this
Yes.
correctly? Just so everybody knows.
Yep.
And I think once this policy is approved, we need to notify all the staff and make sure they're aware of how that policy works. I don't think there are any problems with what you can seek funding for and the ways you can go about doing it. I've seen some seeking of funding already this year. It's been perfectly appropriate, but I was concerned that we had approved this in the spring and nobody had told anybody.
Okay.
So,
We
my
have not.
mistake.
Yeah.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Budget and planning directive, since I don't think you received a whole lot of suggestions.
No, and again, it's a pretty general, draft, and we're not moving forward with a calendar at this point, but the directives have been pretty close to that for the past few years. As you get into the real budget development, you have a lot of flexibility to go in any direction that you want to go.
And are we looking at voting to approve the
Yeah.
directives tonight?
Yep.
Because I have a couple of thoughts about those. I expressed them to Mike, we discussed them a little bit, so I'm not going to catch him by surprise. I think on the second bullet, that it would be a good idea to put in based upon curriculum needs and projected enrollments. Part of the problem is that line 3 essentially is zero-based budgeting. Okay, and we used to call it that in the old days anyway. And President Reagan, you want one more dollar, you got to find it somewhere else. I don't think enrollment should be the only concern. If we feel that there are additional curriculum needs, I just like to add those few words to the second one. Must be based upon curriculum needs and/or projected enrollments.
I don't have a
Mike's
problem
actually nodding.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
fine. It's your
So that would be
directive.
the
so-
second line, and, Mike, I gotta put you on the spot and get you to confirm that you agreed that this was pretty flexible anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, there are years when we have some money, like this past year, and I didn't mean to suggest to you that we just hired a bunch of administrators, because I'm sure we hired teachers too, and I'm happy with all the hirings, but it was a lot of new money.
Yeah, it was.
And it certainly was not zero-based budgeting. So this is just kind of a guideline
It's
rather
elastic.
than
Yep.
a set of hard and fast rules.
It's elastic.
They're parameters, and it's,
Okay,
Can we have a motion to approve as amended?
so moved.
Second.
Okay.
Did you do
Aye.
Did you do the calendar and directives? I thought we got held.
we did not do
we
the
did not do the
calendar.
calendar,
Yeah.
because we're not
Thought
ready
we
for
just
that.
did.
No, we
No,
did the
we
directives,
did.
but not the calendar, because
Didn't do the calendar.
there's still some, we need some information from Libby on the
Oh,
calendar.
The budget calendar.
Yeah, the budget.
Not the school calendar,
Yeah.
okay.
Meeting
Yeah.
minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There weren't any transfers.
Yep, make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
Okay. So it's with mixed emotions that I announce tonight at the school committee my retirement as superintendent of schools for the Nantucket Public Schools, effective at the end of this school year. I have immensely enjoyed my tenure as your superintendent. And I've appreciated the support of the school committee, the administration and staff, as well as the community of Nantucket. When I first arrived on our shores in 2010, you embraced me and worked with me to help our students and community rebound from some tough financial times and emotional struggles for those of us that were here in 2010. I am proud of what we have accomplished while recognizing there is still much to do. By announcing now, I hope to give the school committee the time to conduct a proper search and find a superintendent who can take us to a higher level. I believe that he or she will find great facilities, a stable and able administration, and a staff that works hard and cares deeply for all of our students. I am proud of our district and amazed by our students who have shown that if you work hard, you can do anything, you can go anywhere, and achieve remarkable accomplishments. I am very proud of our graduates, from those who have attended MIT, the Naval Academy, and Stanford, to those especially who are the first in their families to go to any college, as well as those who go straight into the world of work. We have some amazing kids in this school district, and they should be proud to be Nantucketers and Nantucket Whalers. And I thank all of you, students and staff, administration, and certainly the school committee for allowing me to be a Whaler, and perhaps to play some small part in the academic, physical, and social development of our students. So thank you very much. I will be here through June 30th, and you can expect that I'll be working just as hard as I have in the past in the next 7 months or whatever. So thank you all.
Do we have any comments?
Yeah, lots of comments.
Well, he isn't dead, so let's.
No.
Yeah, where's the real wood when you need
Party
it?
at the end of the year, and you're gonna make a lot of those comments then.
Yeah. No, I can speak, I think, for us, but for me personally, just thank you, Mike, for everything that you've done and brought to our community. And you've done a tremendous amount to bring us to where we are today. And yes, you always credit others, but it starts with the leadership. And you've been absolutely brilliant, as
Thank
we
you.
say across
Brilliant.
the pond. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sad.
Okay.
But thank you for
Thanks.
everything.
Yep.
I mean, I've never known, even growing up here and attending school here, a superintendent to be so involved with their students. And I so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Kids.
That's all I can say.
Thank you. Thanks.
To be honest,
Steve, you're not going to.
Oh, gee, don't be honest, Steve.
no, I have to be honest. Mike and I have had our moments. Those moments were when we were on opposite sides as far as negotiations and contracts and so on and so forth. But I have to acknowledge some of the great stuff he's gotten done. Not just the new schools, but not forgetting CPS and getting its addition, which was desperately needed as well. I don't know of anybody else who could have done what got done like that. I'm sure there are other things too, but in my brief tenure on this board, that's the one that sticks out in my mind, is those were desperately needed and they've worked out wonderfully. So, a lot of good things have happened.
Well, and again, none of it happens based on one person. And I could point to everybody in this room who has worked hard to make the things happen. So, and we have more work to do, but good things are happening. It's a good time to pass it over to someone with another vision. And I think I feel good about the timing and the opportunity for somebody to come in and build on it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Subcommittee work group. Anything?
Well, we started ESP negotiations yesterday. A smooth opening. I expect a smooth set of negotiations. I've set a date of Thanksgiving to have them done. We'll see.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about the agenda for the next meeting, Mike?
Yeah, I think I had given you a new on the horizon, and we know that we've added, let's see, we have the meeting, the first October meeting, we have both the ELL presentation and the preliminary MCAS. That won't be the deep dive that we will do with administration, but I think that we will have the embargo lifted and that Mike and Jean will present those preliminary figures, and there's some good news in there. And so I think some good things to for the district to celebrate. But I think that's plenty for that meeting. And then on the 16th, we will meet with Glenn Kuchar, go over a number of things with him, with the school committee, and then also review the district goals. I think that was the plan for that meeting. And then we added a meeting on the 23rd. So that extra meeting should help us get through and sort of get back on schedule before we get into
we
budget development.
Talk about or add a workshop?
We did.
When?
The workshop will be with Glenn Kuchar.
October 16th.
That's the
October
16th.
16th?
That was a Tuesday.
It's on the other side of that, actually.
Oh.
So the 16th meeting will be at 4:30. That's a workshop with Glenn Kuchar.
Oh, and it does say,
Yeah.
okay, 16th,
And then in the second, we'll have the two reports.
4:30?
If I may, and not like right hot off the press, but Tim, I know you've done this before, superintendent search. And I'm not sure how the school committee goes out with that initially, but I would think that that would be something that we'd need to bring on to the horizon. I'm happy to work with
Definitely.
you on that
Yep.
ahead of time, just to sort of put something in place, but I would think that we would want to put that.
And I
on
think
the
Mike has a
table.
couple of ideas of places and ways to possibly approach. We need to discuss which, if not both.
Yeah, I won't guide that process. That's your process, but I think Glenn Kuchar can give you a lot of advice at the workshop on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.